Sacred unions and harmonious, functional, healthy relationships is the foundation for non-monogamous and polyamorous relationships. All right. My name is Asha Sekhmet. Welcome to my channel, founder of the Maji Community. We talk all things spirituality, polyamory, non-monogamy, sovereignty, and tribalism here on this channel, all things about relationships. And we even delve into other forms of intimacy as well, because I'm a Tantra practitioner. But not to get off the point, I am here to talk about the foundation for non-monogamous and polyamorous relationships. Now, what I observe in the modern Western world is people are either having forms of dysfunctional poly, calling their relationships monogamy, but deeper, when you look at their family dynamics, it's just dysfunctional poly, which is blended families. And it's just that people are just not in the consciousness that is communal and understanding of healthy relationships to actually build a family that is on, non-monogamy and polyamory in a functional, healthy way. So what has been coming recently, I would say over the last, year or so with doing this work, I will hear this more particularly from sisters more. And it's always this concept of when you bring up the language and people living in their truth of polyamory, it's like, well, I still need to understand how to do monogamy because they're tired of dysfunction, unhealthy family dynamics, X, Y, and Z. But when you look at their family structure, these are people who are think they're practicing monogamy, but they're practicing dysfunctional forms of poly until someone breaks them. So really, the heart of what's going on is that you have to become that healthy relationship for you to attract it, no matter what structure it is. So the idea here is that it's the level of depth of work that you're doing that's being reflective in the relationships that you attract. So this is important because even if a person says, okay, I want to know how to do monogamy because I've always been in dysfunctional relationships, you're going to continue to follow that dysfunction until that is healed within, right? So this type of situation that I'm referring to is people understanding the shadow work. And this is a real thing. The shadow is a real thing. The ego is a real thing. This is why I birthed the Poly Shadow Workbook, because I actually go over this in depth, right? When we talk about sacred unions and having a healthy relationship, you have to have and be peace and health within. If you're continuing to have imbalances in your relationship, it is reflective of imbalances that are in you. So regardless of the structure, you're going to continue to repeat those cycles. And for women in particular, I do understand that there is this dysfunctional program around love, right? And sometimes that creates dysfunction in our relationships because it's a deeper level of possession instead of ownership that we think that we desire because we want to feel a sense of worth from someone else, but that comes internal. So I actually have a chapter that goes over that in the Poly Shadow Workbook. That is the level of inner work. So if you continue to, for men and women, I've seen this. So let's talk about on the men's side, right? So if you're a man who is having difficulties getting women, attracting women in relationships that are not possessive of you, meaning that she can share you in love with other women and you all are functional about it. If you cannot attract that, that's because that you also have subliminal possessive and dysfunctional family and relationship patterns that you are attracting. You cannot desire something that you are not. Does that make sense? That's very egotistical, right? So if you're used to operating relationships that are, separate as a man, and you still lack the consciousness to know how to unify and make all of your relationships with multiple women in a structured, communal way, it's because of these dysfunctional things that I'm referring to on a shadow level, on ego work that you have to do. And when you do not do that depth of work, it's reflective in your relationships. It's reflective there. So the reality is that you have to continue to do the depth of work in order to attract that. So if you desire a healthy relationship, right, in a sacred union that is going to be a part of community, which is poly, that means that you have to first become health, peace. You have to be able to attain that frequency. Otherwise, if you come in the frequency of something that is actually functional and healthy, you won't resonate with it. You'll vibrate out of it. You won't be able to hold the frequency. If anything, you may not even have an attraction to it because you still have that level of disease in the spirit. And when I say disease, I just mean dysfunction and imbalances in the spirit. Okay. So all of this is involved in that inner work. So this is what I have in the Poly Shadow Workbook. And the reason that I really break this down is because this is where people just continue to get stuck up on literally for lifetimes. I mean, that's insane, right? That's insane to continue to birth children, without acknowledging, this level of work, because this is real. These are real things. So even when we talk about intimacy, like Tantra itself, and when all the beauty that we can think of that comes from a natural state of bliss and a lifestyle like that, you are completely above possession. You are completely above needing someone in your life that's just yours to make you feel a sense of worth. You are literally in a state of bliss. You're everything opposite of that, right? So it's like these undermining things. And what is that really is programming. I mean, it's programming. These did not come from yourself. There's a reason that this construct, especially in the US, operates the way it does, right? It's divide and conquer. That's the reason that sustainable community cannot coexist in that, right? Because that's what that's going to be. And you're going to continue those cycles until the level of depth of work is done in the bloodline to break those cycles. There was a sister I was talking to, and we were bringing up the concept of abuse in a relationship with someone that we knew. And when I talked about abuse, I was talking about the woman experiencing emotional abuse, but she automatically interpreted as sexual abuse. And anytime she hear like a woman being abused, she think of sexual abuse. But that was because deeper, I didn't know this until later on, it was because she was sexually abused. And so I say this to say, this is a deeper sense of awareness, and also it's very sensitive. So I also want to frame this for, trigger warning when I'm speaking of this. I definitely, advocate and understand, tools out there like therapy. And when we talk about family patterns that are dysfunctional, we perceive it as normal, right? When these things have been very traumatic things, and we perceive this as our reality as normal, and that everyone just go through that, or that this is everyone's reality. And I'm relating this back to the reason that the Poly Shadow Workbook is so important, because you'll be able to identify these types of inherited family patterns that you are carrying in relationships that you think are normal, and they are not normal, right? And that we are really, in this situation, if you experience sexual abuse, you have been a victim, right? In that, um, type of, failure of your family, protection and health. And so I just wanted to talk about this. I know it's very sensitive, and I want to say that I have not personally experienced sexual abuse. So I want to be careful in how I'm talking about this and sensitive. But of course, it's very disheartening and it breaks my heart to talk about this. I have had people in my family personally who have experienced this. And what I can say as a Tantra practitioner, and I do have expertise in the energetic and spiritual healing of intimacy and relationships, and this comes up in my work as well. I just want to say that, one, if you've been a victim of this, right, you do not deserve that. And there is a correlation that I have seen with sexual abuse in the Black American community in particular, and hypersexuality. And so this has a lot of um, indications, things that come up on a relationship level. So I just want to just talk about this from the perspective of awareness. The Poly Shadow Workbook blends indigenous wisdom that I was initiated in and modern understanding of polyamorous relationships and the Maji Community teachings on polyamory from a community center approach. All of that giving you journal prompts, healing exercises, and vital information for you to understand the ego and the shadow so that you can start creating your relationships consciously. Remember, even when we talk about generational wealth, through polygamy and polyamorous relationships, you cannot get generational wealth without generational health. And so this is why the Poly Shadow Workbook exists, so that we can get through that first foundational understanding of sacred unions in polyamory towards sovereign community. And you can look at my videos. I do talk about my personal experiences in my own personal family. You could be that chosen one to do that work, to break those cycles of the shadow. And this is all what the Poly Shadow Workbook is about. I utilize the information and some of the exercises that I mentioned in there is my personal experience and what has got me to a better level of building relationships and community. And it's given me a higher level, a sense of fulfillment, because I am putting community first and I am in communal consciousness. So you could take a look at my videos. I have a lot of videos where I talk more about my personal experiences in my personal family and things I've had to overcome. Right. So this is a result of having children and just reproducing and existing as a human on an animal level. But there's higher levels of human development. So in order to get sustainable community through polyamory and non-monogamous relationships, this is the work and the foundation that you need to do so that you are rising above animal level in your family, so that that is the foundation that you can actually get towards consciously creating relationships that build towards sustainable community. It all starts with attaining Christ consciousness. And when you attain that, then you are getting to higher levels of human development and rising above animal level, where you're just reproducing, having children, and learning lessons. So when you get to that level, then you are in communal consciousness, which means that you would be having polyamory and non-monogamous relationships that build towards sustainable community, generational wealth, and health together. So let me know your thoughts in the comments, anything that may have came up for you This is giving you a deeper level of energetic and spiritual work for your relationships so that you are able to create, healthy family dynamics that are actually building towards sustainable community. If you didn't take anything away from this video, I would lastly say, remember that sacred union and polyamory starts with understanding that relationships are meant to serve a community. When you pursue relationships based on your own individual interests and your personal fulfillment, it is destined to give you more lessons until you start to understand what it fully means to be human and build community. All right, so make sure you like this video, subscribe to my channel, and I will see you all in the next video. And you can also get the Poly Shadow Workbook on my website, ashasekhmet.com. And if you would like to have a one-on-one with me, you can schedule a spiritual consultation with me or a polyamory consultation with me on my website as well. I will see you all in the next video.